The Atlas series is a trilogy of 3 books published by UC Press: Infinite City, a San Francisco Atlas, published in 2010, Unfathomable City, a New Orleans Atlas, published in 2013, and Nonstop Metropolis, a New York Atlas, published in 2016. Each book in the series functions as a reinvented modern atlas, containing 20 to 30 illustrated color maps with accompanying essays. The project was originated and coordinated by writer and activist Rebecca Solnit, but each book contains the work of multiple essayists, historians, culture bearers, illustrators, cartographers, and designers. Solnit was drawn to map making as a way to express the multiplicity of urban spaces. She says, "If the narrative we call a storyline is like a road, a path, a river, then a map allows for multiple storylines and paths to overlap, collide, converge, and intersect. Maps are versions of places, and every place exists in innumerable versions." The maps in each volume tend to emphasize historical, social, and environmental lived experience. Solnit says the history of maps is often imperial and colonial. Mapping can serve justice, diversity, forgotten histories, erased groups, marginalized communities. The maps in the trilogy range from whimsical to weighty in subject matter, with titles like The Lineup, Live Oak Corridors and Carnival Parade Routes, Oil and Water, Extracting Petroleum, Exterminating Nature, and Sugar Heaven and Sugar Hell, Pleasures and Brutalities of a Commodity. In terms of design, I'm interested in how the books use grids, type, composition, color, cartography, and binding to evoke the idea of an atlas and to unify disparate subjects and work by multiple creators into a cohesive whole. The tall rectangular trim size of the first atlas was originally chosen so that the maps, which fall on page spreads, would be roughly square in shape, like the city of San Francisco itself. The editors briefly considered matching the dimensions of the preceding books to the dimensions of New Orleans and New York, but decided to keep the series consistent in size. The muted sandy brown color of the covers, French flaps, and faux tape binding effect created by colored spines are evocative of more traditional vintage atlases. The logo and title for each book, bolder and in black, catch the eye. The cropped lighter gray maps at the bottom of each cover feel less defined, spaces onto which multiple experiences and histories can be projected. The logos, designed by Alison Pebworth, use the same typeface, similar banners around the text, and near symmetry to create consistency, but incorporate iconography specific to each city: planes and skyscrapers for New York, and a watery trumpet for New Orleans. While the cover designs ultimately do seem successful and appealing, the perfect binding makes it difficult to open the books all the way, so the middle vertical section of each map is much harder to read. Given that the maps are so detailed and the central focus of the books, I wonder if other binding options were available to the publisher to make the maps more readable. Within each atlas, the text of the essays is organized within a very consistent grid. The wide margins create visual space on the page, especially compared to the colorful maps that extend right to the borders of the page spreads. The blue borders around chapter introductions help readers access shorter, more approachable chunks of information. The serif font, which echoes the formal serious tone of the book, is fairly consistent, though varied in size, to signpost important information. Chapter numbers are red and titles light blue to aid in clarity. Details on the maps are marked with a plainer, more readable non-serif font, while the map titles are italicized for a fancier, more ornate look. The consistency of the grid, use of color chapter headings, and wide margins around the text make the essays much more readable and prevent the surfeit of information within the volumes from becoming overwhelming. However, the illustrations inset into the text are not always placed consistently, which can interrupt or break the text in confusing ways. In terms of design, the most interesting aspect of the atlases is the maps. The maps are all created collaboratively. The cartographer creates a map based on research from the book's writers and historians, the book designer chooses a color palette and typography for the map, and the illustrators develop images to accompany the maps. The illustrations for the maps are most effective when they interact with the shape and space of the map. Renowned local New Orleans artist Brandon Odoms drew figures for the map, Bounce Cools Up, a Vanished City, that appear to be dancing across the map, in a formation that roughly follows the curve of the Mississippi River. modeled on and in subversion of cartouche illustrations from 17th and 18th century maps. The editor and art director of the series chose distinct color palettes for the maps of different cities. They say, for San Francisco, the palette is muted and chalky. We represented New Orleans with a watery and translucent look. We chose deeper and more intense colors to reflect New York's energy and complexity. Although a wide range of color is used in the book, most maps only employ 2 to 4 colors for a more coherent look. Color and value are used both symbolically and to determine mood. The map of New Orleans trees uses greens, the map of the BP oil spill uses blue, and the map about lead poisoning and political corruption uses somber dark grays and purple. Similarly, although value changes from map to map, some lighter, some darker, overall value is balanced within each map to make demarcated spaces appear defined and clear and to allow the small contrasting text of the map, usually in white or black, to be readable. In conclusion, although some design aspects of the Atlas series, the binding, inset illustrations, etc., can cause frustration and confusion, overall the grids, typography, color palettes, and illustrations are successful in unifying and organizing a wide range of information that could otherwise be overwhelming to the reader. The beautiful colors, layouts, and illustration of the book's maps succeed in appealing to modern readers who are more used to interacting with digital maps and GPS. Like a map, the volumes are meant to be objects readers can enter at any point rather than reading chronologically, and through design communicate the multiplicity of place and history rather than functioning as a definitive authority.